Welcome back to Selling Your Business with David King. I'm David King, and I'm the author of Selling Your Business, Begin with the End in Mind. It's available on Amazon. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to this podcast and please give it a perfect rating. Today, we have the immense pleasure of being joined by Herb Morgan. Herb is a registered investment advisor. Herb, welcome.
David, it's good to see you.
Herb is the man, the myth, the legend about town in San Diego. He is known by one name, Herbie. So when it comes to Herbie and managing money, this is the guy. So if Herb, tell us about yourself. Tell us about your background, your education, how you got where you are today.
Well, let's see. Grew up here in San Diego, native. My wife also grew up here. She's a native. It's kind of rare. Went away up to University of California, Santa Cruz back in 1984. Spent 4 years there, majored in economics, had the time of my life. Went on to graduate school for a short period of time to work on a doctorate in economics. Didn't end up completing that doctorate. Got out and primarily for financial reasons, and ended up going to work on Wall Street. Thought I would go, maybe a year or two, then go back and finish that doctorate. Here I am at age 55, no interest in finishing the doctorate. Been working on Wall Street in various capacities for the better part of 30 years now, enjoying every minute of it. Love the markets. Don't know what I'd do with myself if they ever tried to make me retire.
That's a sad commentary on what we become at over time, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You'd think I'd say I wanted to go hike the Andes, play golf, travel the world, but what I really love doing is crawling inside my Bloomberg terminal.
Ouch, ouch. I feel for you, man. So your business today, your practice, tell us about what your registered investment advisory does for clients.
Yeah, so we, as a registered investment advisor or RIA, we are money managers. So we manage money on behalf of other people. Sort of operationally, the way that works, they come to us, they sign a contract that allows us to make investment decisions with discretion in their own brokerage accounts. We don't commingle people's assets in a pool or fund or anything. They have individual accounts at a custodian, like a TD Ameritrade or a Charles Schwab. Those are the ones that we use. In fact, Charles Schwab has purchased TD Ameritrade. About the vast majority of those clients come to us through what's called an intermediary. So a financial planner generally is more of a generalist, and a financial planner works with clients to determine, hey, what are your goals? What are your objectives? Then they say, well, we need this money to do this, so let's put it with this money manager. This money manager would be me and my team here in La Jolla, in San Diego, California. We launched the firm back in 2004, and same people pretty much. We have a lot of long-term tenured employees who've been with us a long time, enjoy what they do. That's it.
How did the firm grow over the past 18 years, I guess? Is it rapid growth or sudden?
It's been almost 18 years. You're right. When I launched the firm, anybody who's an entrepreneur knows it's an incredibly scary thing to do, especially when you have a good job, and you're not risking your capital, and your medical is paid at least in part, and your Social Security is matched, and your Medicare is matched, and all that stuff that an employer provides to you, where you don't have to risk your own capital. Still, I was in my mid-30s. I had that entrepreneurial bug, that desire, that sort of American spirit of being an individual, where you want to go out and say, well, I can do it. I can go against big names on Wall Street, and I can compete, provide a service of value, and make a living doing it. So you take that chance, right? And you launch, and the stats. The stats aren't good. 70% of folks probably won't make it. A lot of ideas are doomed from the start. Some businesses easier than others, but we took that chance. I was the first account. So I have to put my money where my mouth is. I opened an IRA account for myself, and we have, we number the accounts internally in addition to their custodial account numbers. My IRA is account ID number 1, and my wife Mary's IRA is account ID number 2. So we like to say we eat our own cooking. Our accounts are managed in the same portfolio strategy as our investors, and they have been since 2004. And slowly, in the early years, we went out and got new customers, word of mouth, marketing. I had been in the industry for a while, so some folks found me. And because we manage for people we don't know through these financial advisors I talked about, we had to go out and we had to establish relationships with those financial advisors. We call those selling agreements or solicitor agreements. So they're soliciting clients on our behalf. Our first one was a credit union out of Arizona. And then it just sort of grew from there. Today, we have hundreds of different agreements with firms around the country.
That's interesting. As RIAs go, is this a very common business model, or are you kind of a pink elephant?
A little of both. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of registered investment advisors.
Sure.
Most people, retail people, and the public would think of it as their local financial advisory firm that they go to that's a registered investment advisor, which of course is different than being a broker dealer. There's a fiduciary duty versus just a duty to not intentionally harm and be suitable. But you can be a registered investment advisor that provides direct, to client services. A giant mutual fund company like Fidelity is a registered investment advisor. That's a different business, right? A giant hedge fund company might be a registered investment advisor. A company that provides advice via a newsletter, they could be a registered investment advisor. And so there are multiple firms. It's not the biggest part of it. So it's an elephant, maybe it's not pink. So that do what we do. We call ourselves really more of a wholesale investment advisor. Of course,
Okay.
within the San Diego community, we naturally end up with some direct clients as well, and all over the country really, but mostly here in San Diego, friends and family. People call us. We don't market per se anymore like we did 20 years ago, but we're still in business, so we don't turn down people when the phone rings.
Now, over your career, you've been involved in mergers and acquisitions, let's say a handful of times. What were you saying? A few?
Yeah, we've early in my career, I was sort of the junior man on multiple deal teams. We acquired several mutual funds and fund companies. This is 25 years ago. We then had a business that I was, a partner in, and we sold that to a larger financial services conglomerate. Started this firm along the way. I made 2 acquisitions as we grew this to the level it is now, before we ultimately sold it back in 2017. So I had a fair amount of transaction experience. I'm not a full-time transaction deal guy, as some people like to be, but I feel I know my way around enough, and I enjoy that process. It's kind of fun because it's a lot of work for one final day. That closing day is pretty exciting.
So fast forward to it was a couple of years ago, right? 2018, 19, maybe?
Well, you're talking about when we sold?
Right, when you were acquired, when
We closed in Feb of 17.
okay.
But we started talking late 15, early 16. So it can take a while.
Yeah. So you sold to a buyer that's both a strategic buyer, because it's an investment bank. It's in the financial services sector. Mm-hmm. But they're also a financial buyer, because they're sophisticated Wall Street guys. They're investment bankers, and they're going to add bells and whistles onto a deal that you're not going to get with just kind of a straight garden variety transaction with, say, another manufacturer. So tell us about this. This is a unique and complicated situation. Tell us how the whole deal happened. How did you get approached by this bank?
Good old fashioned cold calling, not on my part, but on their part. The firm that acquired me is a large global, highly respected financial services firm. So when I got the call, I thought they were maybe soliciting me for trading or something like that. And they said, no, this is the head of asset management. And we've done our due diligence. We want to be in your little corner of the world of asset management. And at the time, I wasn't seeking to sell, but I knew well that I had taken the firm as far as I could personally in terms of the capital I had. And I either had to go out and raise a round, it's like an institutional round, find a partner that could take time, that could be very expensive. There's not a lot of capital just sloshing around our space, although there's quite a bit more today. And they said, no, look, we're very long on distribution, which is, as an asset manager, it's an important thing. You want to be able to distribute your products and get scale. But we're short on product, and we really like your offerings. We like your track record. We've done some basic research on you as a person, and would you have any interest at all? And he said, well, I hadn't really thought about it, but given the nature of who that you are and the nature of who I am in terms of size and scope and capital, I'd be a fool not to take that call and have that conversation. And so that's really how it started. They had identified a list. They just started going down that list, calling to see if anything would pop. Just good old fashioned, beating the bushes. And that's how we met.
So 2015 to 2017, maybe not the full 2 years, but that's not exactly a Vegas chapel wedding, getting the deal closed. You guys did not run to the justice of the peace. You had to meet Papa and Grandpa and, tell us about this process.
Well, it was about 16 months. So from start to finish, you start with, okay, let's just get together and talk, right? So, we're in San Diego, they're in the World Financial Center, the global financial center of the world. They say, well, okay, great. Why don't you come on out? So that's 2 or 3 weeks, right? They got to come out. You got to meet. You got to get to know each other. You talk about the business. You play golf. Okay, they go back. We want to do something. We're going to get you a letter of intent, right? Well, that could be 4, 5, 6 weeks when a big company is acquiring you, because they've got approvals, they've got levels, they might have a committee. It's a capital allocation, right? To just spend that money. Sure. Terms of the letter of intent have to go back and forth. And if you have a great lawyer on your side, he or she is going to help you and advise you. And there's going to be some strikes, and some underlines and all that. That ended up probably being, like 4 months. Now, I think that's longer than normal. But that's a little bit of a nature of A, the company that was acquiring me. They're not fast movers. And B, the nature of me, I like to negotiate slowly and see how serious somebody is. And that happened to, kind of work out. So we didn't get serious probably until, spring of 16, before we started even getting, past the letter of intent stage.
Well, Herb, you hit on one key thing there that people can do right when they're going to do a transaction. And it sounds like you did do it correctly. Go ahead and get your attorney involved in the letter of intent stage. We get it that people are still negotiating the deal terms, and that's not what the lawyers are going to do. But there's a lot more than that's in the letter of intent. And if a lawyer, people say, oh, it's non-binding, great, but that's still the only deal you're going to get, unless it gets worse than that. For a lawyer, you walk in, the letter of intent's already signed. It's kind of like walking into an operating room where you didn't see the person ahead of time. You've just told, this is what you're going to go do. Great, I'll go do it. But boy, I might have been able to contribute a little bit if I'd have looked over the patient. So bravo, and note that to all other business owners. let your attorney let your attorney look at the letter of intent and get involved in.
Oh yeah, it's critical too, and it's just so it's a fine investment, right? I'm an investment. What value do I get for engaging a professional for the letter of intent early? Well, you might avoid a lot of problems, and you might not even be able to get to the end, right? You may find that there are differences that just aren't ever going to be surpassed, that you can say, okay, well, let's just end it here. And then your only cost was that letter of intent. You didn't actually get into the deep due diligence or the definitive purchase and sale agreement.
Yeah. So tell us the due diligence process, and kind of having to bear all, and sharing them, selling your business to the buyer.
Well, due diligence is it can be broad, it can be simple, or it can be incredibly detailed into minutia that maybe you as a seller feel is too much minutia. But if the buyer's asking it and they haven't yet written you the magic check, then you sort of play along. And in our case, I was selling to a very sophisticated buyer who was very smart about assessing the risks that they might be getting. One of the things as sellers is you say, well, it's an asset sale, you're not taking the liabilities, so why do you care? But really, a lot of buyers really do want to care, because those potentially, even though it's an asset purchase on their side, some of those liabilities can come back to haunt the business down the road. So in my case, my buyer was very sophisticated. They had a very significant deal team that did the due diligence. The due diligence went on for a very extended period of time, and a couple of times, I thought it was done, and I remember getting the call like, "Hey, well, we're ready for the deep dive now." I'm like, "What? The deep dive?" But nowadays with technology, data rooms are key, right? And so you have those data rooms; they're all set. Everybody's got their part, fill and the checklists. And there'll be some more requests. Everybody should know about that. You're going to go through it, but it is pure. I guess the expression is open kimono, right? If someone's going to buy your business, they absolutely deserve to see and know everything, and it's just critically important that you give them everything, because you don't want any surprises after the fact. You're going to attest. Right, you're going to sign a lot of things at the end saying, "Hey, I've given you everything. There's no additional stuff," and I think that's just important. Just give it all to them. It helps you in the long run as a seller.
You hit on a key point there again, that even with an asset sale, the only way that you can make it an asset sale and be free from all the liabilities, all the claims that anybody might have against an ongoing company that, say, had 12, 15 years of operations. The only way to do that is by having a thorough agreement that rips those liabilities off, so they don't go to the buyer. So it's never easy, and that objective, achieving that, requires some thorough, careful drafting. Which issues did you feel like, these are, complicated, this is requiring the most kind of thought, the detailed complexity sort of terms?
Just generally speaking, over all the deals I've been involved with, sometimes as a business person, you say, well, the value of this potential liability, let's say I'm going to make something up, the remaining term on my water cooler contract. Okay, so let's say this is a de minimis value.
Yeah.
So as a business person, I'm going to say, well, that doesn't even matter, because it's $28 a month and there's 12 months left, right? It's an irrelevant potential liability to the buyer in some way. I think buyers in general sometimes just don't look at the value of it. They just look at the fact that it is a liability, and our marching orders from our capital are, you got to drill. And so as a seller, you can get into this frustration mode. And I would tell everybody, it's just part of the deal. You just got to keep going as you're marching towards that close and that finish line. And if they want that water cooler contract, by golly, You get it to them and they need 3 days to review it. Have at it.
Yeah, exactly. Just play nice, get along, get the deal done. It's not worth it over something piddly like that, even
Yeah,
though it's frustrating.
right.
So you still work at your registered investment advisor post closing, and you have been since then.
Yeah.
So a lot of people get to the end of the road, they take their chips off the table, and they're not playing any more hands. You, on the other hand, got the opportunity to sell and to keep playing. So that's from a financial standpoint, that's optimal. A lot of times people are in a situation where the buyer comes in, we're only going to have one person sitting in the corner office giving orders, and someone else is coming in and taking your place. You obviously are still there. You still got some independence. Tell us about that.
Well, our business is such that, well, this particular acquirer on this particular deal said, listen, what's the asset in the money management firm? Well, it's what's between the ears of the portfolio manager. So they haven't gotten rid of me yet. So I guess I'm still doing a reasonably good job. And I love money management, and I love making the decisions there. Do I really love doing finance and accounting, legal, compliance, human resources, state filings, all the stuff you have to do? No. And that was, to me, what's made it attractive. It was, listen, we want you to continue managing the money.
Mhm.
We would like to invest in your business, right? To give you the growth, take a lot of the things off your table that you don't really love doing.
Right.
And it's for me is it's allowed me to focus more on the part I love, which, I'm looking at you on one monitor, but I've got 3 more. It's Fed meeting day. I got the graphs, I got the charts. I'm a nerd. It's fun. The red, the green. For me, it was sort of the best of both worlds, right? I get an exit. I'm not old, but I'm not young anymore. So when I finally do say it's time to hang up the spurs, it's great that the company's in institutional hands. When you're a proprietor, there's people always say, well, what happens if something happens to you, right?
Mhm.
And I think at the point I was at, we were, over $1 billion firm in assets. I think it was the best thing for my customers, right? You want to be in a strong hand that if Herbie takes a fall on the ski slope and hits his head,
Right.
there's a lot of resources here behind. I mean, I have younger portfolio managers in here as well, but just made sense.
And now you've taken a whack on the noggin before, right? You mean a
More than
really big
once.
hit. You're
I've taken
dropped on your head a few times, right?
Yeah, it explains a lot.
So as an RIA, and you said you've had some direct clients, do you work with them, and do you know people, that are they're in kind of the same situation? They also own a business, and maybe they're talking with you that, hey, this is where I am today financially. I may have a major liquidity event, working with them through that transition.
Yeah, I get it a lot, actually. I just finished working with a client who sold his business for the second time. He started it, he sold it to a conglomerate, and they doubled the size in 5 years, and then they just sold it again. And each time, like me, he gets to go and continue to be the CEO
Mm-hmm.
of that business. And they call me a lot, saying, "Hey, we know you did this. What are some of the important things?" They tend to try to ask me tax advice and legal advice. I keep telling them I'm neither, right? I can't give you those things. But here's some questions you might ask your tax advisor and your legal advisor. And then hopefully they have that big liquidity event, and then we're able to manage their wealth for them, obviously in a preservation mode. We always tell people, hey, look, you took all your risk, your big risk, owning a smaller mid-sized company. You had a lot at risk, a lot at stake. Now it's all about preserving it and growing it, and hopefully at a rate that exceeds inflation. Right now, inflation's been a little hot for the last 6 months or so, 8 months or so.
That's another great tip that you're giving them there. Ask those tax questions to your tax advisor and ask them early. And the only dumb question is the one you didn't ask. And usually you get to too close to closing. Great. I could have helped you maybe a couple of years ago, but the ship has sailed for doing something that could have been helpful. So right now, you mentioned that how many monitors you got up, and it's the market is brutal at the moment, and there's a high level of economic uncertainty out there. Only to the extent that you're comfortable and able. I mean, what do you observe about this market? What would you share with us today?
Well, hey, look, today's May 4th, 2022. We're 27 minutes currently away from a Fed decision to raise interest rates 50 basis points. And I may not be perfect. I may not remember this perfectly, but I don't think there's been a 50 bip hike in about 20 years. So I think there's this consensus that inflation is going to be out of control. And that narrative is fueled by a lot of sort of online kind of goofy reporting. I think in reality, the Federal Reserve of the United States of America has the tightest guardrails of any central bank in the world. Back in the late 1970s, Congress gave them this mandate of price stability, and full employment. It's a dual mandate. Now that's in addition to the original mandate, which was don't let banks fail, be the lender of last resort. They bring you their loans, you loan them money, so nobody has to shut down. And so the Fed has always started to raise rates as inflation was rising, but before it got to their 2% target. Mm-hmm. This time around, there was so many jobs lost because of the COVID shutdown, which was an ill-conceived strategy from an economic standpoint, which we could go talk about hours about why that was wrong, right? Or go Google. I was on CNBC saying why it was wrong and all that in my podcast. But the reality is we destroyed all these jobs. So the Fed came and we never had a drop in aggregate demand in our economy. Every other recession has been a drop in aggregate demand. And so we're trying to stimulate to bring back demand. We didn't have a demand problem and we overstimulated and then caused a supply shortage. So we had high demand, we stimulated, we got more demand, and we shut down supply. Well, that's going to cause inflation.
Right.
Translate that to the equity markets today. They're down roughly 20% from their all-time high. I always remind people, unless you invested one time and one time only in your whole life at exactly the all-time high, you bought 100% stocks, and then the market dropped, and you sold it all on that day, you didn't lose 20%. So stop, tossing and turning. You invest over the course of a lifetime. If you have a little extra cash, probably a good time to put it to work. Right now, probably decent. Was the market going to turn around tomorrow or next week? Or it might even turn around this afternoon. I don't know. But the stocks were a little overvalued, and now they're about where they should be. And I think that the reality is we are in this stage of this secular growth, and technology is driving that. Moore's law, the semiconductor, the internet, Web 3.0. Web 3.0 is a huge deal. Blockchain, robotics, artificial intelligence, and the companies at the forefront of that, for the vast majority of the opportunity set, are listed in the United States of America. That's a great thing. So we're lucky to have easy access to these exchanges, the best regulated with the most transparent accounting in the world. To me, volatility is my friend. It's my opportunity. Qualcomm's down, 20, 30%, great company. Meta, Amazon, Google, what do they call it now? Alphabet. Yeah, you gotta love these companies at these levels. Apple Computer, they dominate the world. Apple Computer, makes about $300 million a day in profit. Why would I sell that ever? Right?
God bless America. That was actually great news. I feel like inspired.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, the percentage of the people in the world, it's the highest percentage population ever in the history of the world, right? And you remember back when we were kids in the 70s, population was less than half what it is today, and we were overcrowded, and we were going to run out of food and water. But we have more than double the people. The highest percentage ever have access to healthcare. The highest percentage ever have access to clean, safe drinking water. The highest percentage ever have access to food. Backing out what I think are temporary effects of the COVID spiking the death rate, we have the longest longevity in history. And one more great statistic, the level of death by armed conflict, this is including what's happening in Ukraine right now, is the lowest level in the history of the world.
Wow.
So what is required for capitalism to flourish and raise the standard of living of the poorest among us? Well, it's capitalism. It's doing that. For some reason, we like to fight and argue in America a lot. It's who we are. It's our culture. And we don't give thanks enough. We have the greatest system. The world wants our system. It's creating wealth and elevating human beings out of poverty and into health and well-being at a rate that's among the highest it's ever been. It all started with this, the Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith, 1776, coincided with the American Revolution, the Great Experience, the Great Experiment, the greatest republic ever. Creation of wealth is not going away. And as much as our lives have changed in the last 20 years with our smartphones, remote healthcare, it's kind of a you ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah.
So you want to own these companies.
Well, Herb, this is optimism, and honestly, it's refreshing to hear this sort of thing. You've been a wonderful guest, and you're living the American dream. So congratulations on your successes. You've deserved them well. And I hope I can have you back on Selling Your Business with David King.
Hey, thanks, David. And my podcast is called Slaying Bulls and Bears. I hope you can subscribe.
There we go. Take care, folks.